I'm Michael Battelle from the Fatty Liver Alliance, and I'm here with one of my favorite guests, Dr. Nadege Gunn. Dr. Gunn's a gastroenterologist and hepatologist specializing in liver disease. Dr. Gunn focuses on cutting-edge clinical trials in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and gastrointestinal illnesses. She's the medical director and president of Impact Research Institute in Waco, Texas, and the perfect person to share insights about today's topic, the myths of clinical trials. Dr. Gunn, we're all living longer because of advances in medicines and life-saving treatments for what are often deadly diseases. And there's new treatments that come out all the time, and they depend upon clinical trials. What are the myths surrounding clinical trials, and what should we know?
Okay, I think this is a fantastic topic of discussion, Mike, and I want to thank you again for inviting me. So I thought about this a lot, and I came up with about 7 myths that I hear from patients, because really patients are the medical heroes. They're the ones who come to the forefront and give us their selves to advance medicine. And one of the biggest myths is, I'm going to be a guinea pig. This just can't be safe. And that is entirely untrue. And so I want to break down one very important thing. Clinical trials are rigorously evaluated. The drugs are checked in on multiple times at various phases. So I explain to patients, number one, there's preclinical research before the drug ever enters the human body. That means we're looking at the properties of the drug outside of any body proper, meaning we're looking at the chemical configurations of these drugs, how it behaves when you mix it with other things. And then we would advance that to animal models to see how it might parallel what could happen in the human body. And that's all preclinical. And then we jump into the phase 1 through 4 clinical trials. And phase 1 is where we take a medication, we give it to healthy human beings, and we monitor them overnight, 24 hours a day, to ensure that their hearts are fine, their kidneys are fine, their livers are fine. This is a very safe way to ensure that the medications are advanced properly and before they make it to commercial use. So you're not a guinea pig. You're actually a medical hero helping to advance medicine, and these drugs are rigorously scientifically followed and evaluated. So that's a myth number 1. Myth number 2 is that this is an opportunity to make big pharma rich. And I don't want to be a part of this, where these big pharmaceutical companies are going to make millions and millions of dollars off of these medications. And in one instance, yes, every business has to make a profit ultimately. But when you think about it, many, many drugs that do come to evaluation and scientific study, they actually fail. They don't make it, and a lot of money is lost. So I do want to just stress that when patients come in thinking that this is just a big money maker for pharma, just to kind of think that it really is worth the money if they do make it, because there's a lot lost in trying to develop a product. Many of the drugs don't make it. Another myth is that it's a bait and switch, that you're going to get lured into a clinical trial and then suddenly they're giving you things that are not approved and are not safe, and then you're just kind of involved in something that you never really signed up for. And that is entirely untrue. So one thing that I like to stress to patients is that everything that we do in clinical trials, it requires their consent. They have to sign an informed consent document pretty much every step of the way. And anytime there's an amendment or a change in the protocol or what we're doing, the patient has to be made aware and has to sign to ensure that they're still okay to proceed in the study. So it is not a bait and switch. It is definitely one that you're very well informed and you have a voice. You have an opportunity to say, this doesn't work for me or this does. So I can go on if you have any questions.
No, please. That's excellent. Thank you.
The other big misconception or myth, and I apologize, a lot of these might just go into one another, so I didn't really organize the 7 that I had in mind, but another big one is that their privacy will be compromised. Patients say, oh, I don't want anybody to know that I'm doing this. I want this to be kind of a secret. Maybe my family doesn't know, or maybe my primary care doctor doesn't know, or something. Your privacy in clinical trials is of utmost importance. Whenever you sign consent to be in a trial, you're no longer Mike. You are subject number 11500. And the information that's collected at that point is de-identified. Nobody knows exactly who you are. So if for whatever reason there's a concern about your privacy, there's not one that you need to worry about, because it's big trouble in the clinical trial industry if a patient's name is leaked out, or their address or their phone number or anything that really identifies that patient. You can get in super big trouble. So that is something to really reassure patients that no, you are volunteering, you're fully informed, and none of your information will be leaked out without your permission. We send that information, of course, out if you give us permission. Now, the only caveat to that is if an emergency situation, say a patient enters the emergency room or goes to the hospital, and the doctors taking care of that patient need to know if they're on a trial of some sort, then of course they'd have to contact the investigators and have a conversation. But at no point is the patient's privacy compromised. One other misconception is that the patient has no voice, that they don't get to really express concern or really even investigate on their own the qualities and capabilities of the site that they're participating in research with. And there is an organization, at least here, it's called the Investigational Review Board, and they open their doors to patient comments and concerns. If a patient is in a clinical trial and they feel that for whatever reason they're being treated unfairly, or they're not really sure if the way or the processes of that specific clinical trial site is appropriate or orthodox, they can call the Investigational Review Board at any time and ask questions and ensure that their rights and protections as human beings are being enforced at all times. So in all, the biggest kind of unifying theme is that many people who are interested or not interested in clinical trials do feel that there's some form of investigation that's not allowed, or they're a guinea pig or what have you. And really that is not it at all. And one of the last things is that there's no incentive to do this. Why am I doing this? There's really no benefit to me. And I always have to reinforce the fact that just spending 2 minutes in a clinical trial facility, you've already offered millions of people something that they may not have had. And although there are small incentives on the front side where we might give the patient a stipend, maybe a little money for gas, maybe a little money for their trouble or a gift card or something, but really the big overall a benefit of being in a clinical trial is the impact that's made to the patients that are waiting for treatments for very desperate conditions. And so that, I think, is a good kind of summary of all the different myths and misconceptions that come along the way with trials.
I think that was great information. I had one other one that I think that people believe that often they're the ones that are going to get the placebo. And so how do I know I'm not putting myself at risk by going through this clinical trial? And you mentioned bait and switch, but you know, this is about me getting a drug that's not even active, let's say.
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm a little ashamed that I didn't bring that one up too.
That's what I'm here.
I'm glad you got one on me, Mike. But the placebo question comes up all the time. So the patient comes in, they have a condition that has no cure, right? There's no treatments available anywhere for their problem. They come in and they're like, I don't want to be in this trial because I can get placebo. Number one, they are fully informed at the beginning of the trial that there's a 1 in 4 chance or 1 in 3 chance that you can get placebo. But the real truth of it all is you're on placebo guaranteed if you don't participate in the trial. And that's what I tell the patients all the time. You're on placebo right now, Miss Smith. You're not getting anything. Why not get into the trial and have a 3 out of 4 chance of being on an active ingredient? And many of the trials, to be honest, depending on how they're set up, some of them if they recognize that the drug is working, then they kind of have to do their due diligence to that placebo arm and transfer them onto active drug. So we're not out to just pull valuable medications away from people. We're trying to really study them, make sure they work, comparing something to nothing. And if we see that the needle is moved and the drug actually works, then now we can maybe offer the drug to those who are on placebo and thank them for participating and allowing us to use them in that way to study the drug.
That's fantastic. And I mean, the bottom line is that people have a chance to be heroes. You said that before. And, you know, given the chance, if people have an opportunity to volunteer that as the control, that would be really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. And I look forward to our next topic as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. Thanks.